now 8:03, and I'll go ahead and call this Committee on Appointments to order. Good morning, colleagues. Nice to see everyone today. We have just a few agenda items that we need to approve, and then we can do a review or get any updates about our current board and vacancy list. So the first item is a resolution confirming Mayor Bliss's appointment of Brooke Osterman to the Economic Development Authority and Brownfield Redevelopment Authority. Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
It's been moved and supported, colleagues. Ms. Osterman, you might know her from some of her work with Housing Next. She is a Second Ward resident, and I think her experience and understanding of development will serve well on this body. All right. I'll go ahead and call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
That carries. Thank you. Next is a resolution confirming Mayor Bliss's appointment of Noah Schneider to the West Michigan Regional Planning Commission. Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. Mr. Schneider, this is a new appointment, and this was supported from some of the liaison work, I believe, and maybe another current member of the West Michigan Regional Planning Commission. And I think this will close out that, and then I think with Brownfield we'll still have one. But any other questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
That carries. Thank you, colleagues. We have those two appointments. Can we go, do we have any, can you remind me, do we have any petitions or communications for this evening of anyone who will be resigning from boards?
Bear with me one moment.
Sure. I didn't grab the full agenda packet before I came in, so. Can you confirm, as Daniel's looking at that, the Economic Development in Brownfield, City Clerk? If that.
It'll be full then.
This will be full, okay. Great. And then, can you go down to West Michigan Regional Planning Commission? Might as well check that one too. I think that one is full, but, perfect.
Mr. Eric Williams is resigning from the Southtown CIA.
Okay, thank you. Can you go to Southtown and see what that,
Maybe make
Okay.
everybody dizzy online.
that's okay.
Oh, they're not. Okay.
So there's one opening, and then there'll be a second opening with Mr. Williams's resignation. All right, and that will be shared, that information gets shared with Ms. Vera in the Economic Development Office, right? And I know you share any openings or any PIFs that we might have for that position, for those positions on our CIAs. Okay. All right, colleagues. Any updates that you all have on any openings that you might have, or any thoughts on any of the openings that we have listed here?
I know we had reached out to Garfield Park about the Parks and Rec opening, and then I met with Granville Avenue Arts and Humanities this past week and mentioned it to them too. So unless you've heard anything, Commissioner Perdue, we could follow up with Garfield Park too to see if there's any interest there.
Okay,
Sounds good.
great. So we have two of those openings, and I think Daniel did send us PIFs for that actually maybe last month when we knew, I think when the second opening came. So if we could look at those as well. I know we did talk about wanting to, just to see in case we don't hear of anybody out of some of those organizations, in particular looking for somebody who's either from the Third Ward or from the southern part of the First Ward, and that overlapping area that you both have. So great, thank you for that follow-up. Any other ones before I share some updates? Okay, all right, if you could go back to the top of the page, City Clerk. For Planning Commission, the mayor is looking at some appointments there. So she had some appointments that were not appointed in the last year when we had an opening, so this should be filled, and that will be a priority. I don't have any other updates on construction or the DID. We just talked about Brownfield. I don't have any updates about housing appeals or the CAB. And then we just talked about Parks and Rec. Smart Zone, those are actually 2 GRPS appointments. I do know that. The mayor and I talked about those. We just talked about Southtown, but South Division does have an opening. Commissioner Robbins, you serve on that body. We could probably go back to Vera and follow up on that one. We've had about, as you both know, on average about 1 opening averaging, which is pretty good for these corridor improvement authorities. Stormwater oversight, I know Commissioner Purdue, you were looking at an appointment for that one. And then Uptown Urban Ag, this has been the farmer's market appointment that I know Mr. Marquardt has been staying connected on. And then other than that, I have no other updates. So I think we're actually sitting in a good spot. At this point in the year I did talk to the city clerk, I think at our last meeting or the last time I saw you. Work is starting to begin on our year-end reappointments, so those that are eligible for reappointments to bodies. I do look at attendance for our CIAs, just because those ones, that had been an area that we needed to focus on in the past. We had some meetings that were canceled due to lack of quorum. I would also say to any liaisons too, if they're, one of the responsibilities is to communicate any issues with attendance. We know that people have a lot of things that happen in life. My belief is just we need to communicate it so that we can make sure that the work of city business and the work that the staff done is not done in vain, so that a meeting can happen. I think that is pretty frustrating if that does happen. So, and remember that these appointments are, if they're a year appointment, a reappointment is not necessarily guaranteed. There could be reasons why a reappointment wouldn't happen. And hopefully that is done mutually and not something that should be a surprise to anybody. But I would remind anybody that's serving that's serving at the pleasure of either whoever the appointment is, and then ultimately this body to approve the appointment. Excuse me. Any other comments that Daniel or City Clerk that you have as it relates to the work that you're doing for the year-end appointment process? And maybe even just a quick review of what it entails, since this would be new.
Sure, absolutely. We are on track via our timeline. Liaisons have been notified which of their board members are eligible for reappointment. And we've asked that they, kind of keep on track of those board members to make sure that either they are reapplying or we're not, getting held up in the process waiting for their application to come in. So once we receive those applications, they're vetted just like any other PIF we receive, personal information form. Mm-hmm. And then they go through the process. They're disseminated to the appointing authority, more often than not Mayor Bliss. Mm-hmm. She'll review the applications we have, select her choices for those either vacant spots or recurring appointments. And then at the last meeting of the year, we'll vote on them as a slate.
Okay. Great. Thanks, Daniel. So I think if we can, so it's August, if you could maybe once a month when we meet, and it can be the first meeting or it can be the second meeting, you decide, just give us a short update. Are you getting all the information that you need? Are there any challenges? In the past, we've had to do an extra meeting for some appointments, but I think it sounds like we're ahead of the schedule for this year, so we probably won't need to do that, so that's appreciated. All right, any other business for this body, colleagues? Hearing none, we will go ahead and adjourn at 8:12. Thank you.
Morning, everyone. We're going to call the fiscal committee to order here at 8:30. Thank you all for being here. We'll kick the agenda off this morning with a resolution authorizing a goods and services agreement with Unmanned Vehicle Technologies to procure small unmanned vehicle system technology in the amount of $99,264.16.
So moved. Support.
Moved and supported. Chief, you want to step to the mic, sir? Good morning, sir.
Morning, committee members, Commissioner. Thank you for your time. Yes, this agenda item, let's see here. All right, so again, it's our strategic plan priorities are on point with the acquisition of unmanned aerial systems, which I will refer to as UAS for the remainder of the day. A safer city through innovation and robust engagement on this topic. Benefits are better images and capability to respond to and deploy for large events, fleeing suspects, critical incidents, traffic and crime scenes. Incidentally, we Kent County Sheriff was monitoring an incident in real time right now. We actually have a drone in the air while I was sitting in my seat. I was reviewing a drone footage from a critical incident when we have a barricaded subject with arm with a machete up on Clancy right now. And because of that drone footage, we're able to more likely resolve this incident with a peaceful outcome for this gentleman who is in need of transport to a mental health facility, not to a jail. More examples of our mutual aid from agencies in the area voluntarily assisting us in the recent past when they've heard of incidents in Grand Rapids where UAS could benefit the people of Grand Rapids, everything from serious traffic crash, missing persons, all the way up to murder. Each one of these, I can explain in detail how UAS benefited the people of Grand Rapids by creating a safer environment. Again, it's not only about safety, it's also about efficiency and quality of police service. The image on the right is what an individual driving through Grand Rapids who's involved in a serious traffic crash would be provided now for court purposes, insurance purposes, et cetera. The image on the left is a quality of image that can be provided by UAS. This was actually a picture that I snapped, recent scene of a shooting, and that's one of our forensics technicians climbing up on a ladder. He hasn't quite made it all the way to the top, but and he's got a camera, and he's doing the same thing. He's trying to get images for evidence, for court. This is not the safest way or the most effective or efficient way to deliver and take these images. For years, drones have been a safety and efficiency feature in modern policing, including many of our neighbors, many of our much smaller neighbors, some of whom are listed here. So you can see agencies as small as 18 officers. I've actually gotten phone calls from small departments up in the Upper Peninsula in the single digits who also have UAS and have had for years. We received a tremendous amount of feedback during our months of discussions and directly addressed the biggest concerns in the policy. The biggest concerns that we heard: weaponization, fear of weaponization, directly addressed in the policy. No UAS shall be weaponized. Concern about artificial intelligence and facial recognition, directly addressed in the policy. Protection for First Amendment activities is an utmost concern to me, to the department, directly addressed in the policy. Acquisition was first planned by my predecessor in 2021, as you can see, with an estimated cost of $300,000. We added it to the strategic plan in February, and that started the conversation anew. Have talked about it nonstop since, just about everywhere I go. I've had discussions, meetings, surveys, hearings, and presentations, many of which you all have been witness to in this very room. This is the RFP selection Its leadership of this company is local, and it's used by many regional departments in the area. Provides everything we ask for and has an excellent reputation for customer service. If you have any technical questions, I just have maybe one more slide. Sergeant Frank Barthel of the traffic unit is here if you have questions that I cannot answer. If we do receive approval today, our timeline is to have UAS available by mid-September. In conclusion, the conclusion slide is missing, but I'll just say we want to be held to high standards. We want the right equipment to provide excellent service for a safer city. That is our goal here. And that concludes this presentation. There is more information to be presented at Cal with specific information about how we comply with Administrative Order 1503. And I'll take any questions if you have any.
Very good. Thank you, Chief, for that presentation. Yeah, this is just the fiscal item to purchase the drones. As the Chief stated, we will be talking about this again at Cal, further in depth about the policy implications. So I'll turn to my colleagues and see if there's any questions about this purchasing item. Commissioner Sassi?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Chief, for the presentation. I wanted to add, too, I think even this conversation has even before then as well. I think it definitely had a stop, so I appreciate you putting the timeline there of 21. But I remember being a neighbor involved on public safety, and I think you were probably on there as well, Commissioner O'Connor, and working really closely with the department as well as the NAACP at the time. I know we looked at different communities that recognize the need for the technology, but also recognize the concern that individuals had about technology. I think, in some ways we live with this thing tied to us, and then it knows what I want 2 days after, maybe 1 day after. And so if we're engaging in technology like this, going into public places, I think it is a balance. Like, I certainly want to protect our privacy, and also, I saw the vehicles, the police department vehicles as I was coming to commission, and I said, well, I wonder what's going on right now, just seeing the activity. So thank you for that update. Do you have a sense from this last year how many times, the department would have engaged with a drone or unmanned? What's the
Unmanned aerial system.
I always forget the words. I know you're not supposed to say drone. How many times we would have utilized one based upon, obviously, you talked about a variety of the incidents that could be used.
So to estimate, I would say just from my own being aware of what's going on in the city, probably critical incidents, we're talking about once a week. But when you add in serious traffic crashes and crime scenes, now you're talking about multiple times a week. So at least I would say on average, probably once a day, twice a day, we would use them.
So $100,000, just, trying to take it back to the fiscal item that we have today, as Commissioner O'Connor mentioned. So $100,000, but utilizing it about a couple times a week. So just trying to get a sense of, I know we can't say this is the per cost of an incident, but under $100,000 or right at $100,000, and we'd be using it on somewhat of a regular basis. So, okay,
Yes.
Thank you. That's all I have for today.
Very good. Any other questions? All right. Hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Probably going to stay up here for item 2, which is a resolution authorizing Grand Rapids Police Department recruit class 23-04 to attend Grand Valley State University Police Academy for a total cost of $84,204.
So moved. Support.
Moved and supported.
This agenda item is for 9 recruits, I believe, to start at the academy on August 28th. And of course, this plays into the role of filling the budgeted vacancies in the police department. I will have public safety later today an update on our recruiting efforts, which are going much better than even I, who's very optimistic, anticipated, and we're headed in the right direction. So we're very excited about getting this class in a couple weeks.
Awesome. Colleagues, questions about this one? Yeah.
Thank you again. Can you share, Chief, a little bit about, I know with GRCC and Grand Valley, we've been tracking also what that diversity looks like from a gender and race and ethnic perspective. Can you share what that has been for Grand Valley?
So the Grand Valley is the ones that we sponsor and put through. I'll tell you just from the brief time I've been here, the last class we had was, when the class began, we had 10 individuals total. There was one African-American female, 2 Asian females, and I want to say 7 white males, which isn't a great number percentage. I don't know the breakdown for this particular class, but certainly diverse recruit class is something that we're very much excited to do. We've been very intentional about it. You know, we have made those trips that we promised out to the historically black colleges and universities. We have a very engaged leadership team who is active in a lot of athletic programs, including high school ones in the area. Visiting military bases, which the military is much more diverse than the general population of Grand Rapids. So we're being very intentional about making those efforts. Little things like, we changed the beard policy because I got input from my African-American officers that they wanted to be able to wear beards. It's something that we've never done in Grand Rapids, but they thought that it would be helpful. And actually, I've got some feedback from some of the young African-American men that have applied that said that was one of the selling points to them. So really, we're doing everything we can. It is a difficult time in policing, but I have seen progress both in recruiting in general and in recruiting diverse candidates, and we're trying to be as intentional as possible. Short answer is I don't have the exact numbers for this class.
Thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Commissioner.
I think, this has been a regular question asked. I would say, I think with the last lateral class, which was maybe a month ago, or some last lateral hires, that was, I would say, racial. I think maybe not on a gender side, but racially and ethnically diverse.
Very much so, yeah. And we have seen we've actually seen a lot of progress in getting those lateral recruits, which obviously are outside the GVSU, but to fill budgeted positions, it's more economically advantageous for us because we do not have to put them through a class. We have we got an African-American candidate from Louisiana, one from North Carolina. And so to have that it's like instant diversity. We don't have to put them through the police academy. They have that experience in sometimes big agencies already, and it's been a real benefit for us. So being appealing, like I said, there's no magic wand for getting people, especially in this day and age in policing, but the best we can do is trying to make the Grand Rapids Police Department that destination that if I want to be a police officer in Michigan, I want to be a Grand Rapids cop. It's got to be like the destination to go. And I'm not going to take credit, but the leadership team that we have there right now has built up morale and, in our business, reputation, word of mouth, even among recruits is everything. So we've gotten to the point where people are calling and saying, hey, we've had interns which went elsewhere, our own interns who went elsewhere, and now we're calling and saying, hey, I think I want to come back home to Grand Rapids because I see the change, I see the positive things you guys are doing there. So the momentum has definitely shifted, and I think that by the time I'm gone in 10 or 15 years, we'll see a whole, we'll be talking about how great of a job we did through this. Yeah, maybe 10 or 15 months, however long you guys keep me.
Thank you, Chief.
Yeah. I say, Commissioner, if it's all right, we can provide once we recruit for this class, we can follow up and provide those numbers on the diversity of the class.
Thank you.
And I imagine at Public Safety said there'll be a presentation later today, so maybe you'll have some of that information.
We'll speak on it again.
Yes.
Yeah.
As well as where we're at on current staffing level.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
But for this specific class, though, we haven't recruited yet, correct?
We don't have the the names yet.
Right,
I don't have them. Somebody else.
Thank you.
All right. Any further questions? All right. Hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 3 is a resolution authorizing funding to the West Michigan Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, the West Michigan Asian Association, and the African American Art and Music Celebration in support of event promotion and cultural inclusivity with Art Prize 2023 in the amount of $15,000.
Support.
Moved and supported. Mr. Kane?
Thank you, Commissioners. I think the title of the item explains what it is. We've done this For a number of years, this funding comes directly from the executive office. This is an opportunity to partner with some local organizations to use their contacts, use their newsletters, use their distribution lists to get the word out about Art Prize. This will be the same as we've done in previous years, working with Art Prize and the organizations to figure out exactly how a portion of this funding would also go to artists too. But look forward to your consideration of this item.
Very good. Colleagues, questions? Commissioner Sassi?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Kane, I just want to clarify. So the West Michigan Chamber, the West Michigan Asian Association are doing the promotion, and then the African American Art and Museum Celebration, there's an event going on.
They have an event, but that funding is separate from this funding.
Okay.
So the City of Grand Rapids is supporting them through the Special Events Office.
Okay.
And Art Prize was generous to also contribute to not only the event, but also an additional award for artists.
Okay, thanks for, I just want to, I think some is promotion, but then we know that there's a actual celebration going on for a couple days.
Sure.
Thanks for clarifying.
Yep.
All right, further questions? All right, hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, sir. Item 4, resolution authorizing a grant of $25,000 to the Family Outreach Center from funds appropriated from the SAFE Task Force.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported.
Thank you. This title maybe is not as descriptive as the other one, but this is a program that we have done before. This is a RFP that the SAFE Task Force has done, trying to promote opportunities to create a more stable environment for people. There's lots of programs that are out there that mentor young people, trying to help them conquer the many problems that they have when it comes to navigating this world. But what the SAFE Task Force has found is, you can mentor them, you can, give them good tools, but then they go back to a chaotic home environment. So this is an opportunity to not only help those young people that are traumatized by violence, but also their families. We've partnered with Family Outreach Center on this before. This particular program would target 6 specific things with the parents and the family members. Create and set appropriate parent-child boundaries, interactions, and communication. Process grieving, loss, and trauma that accompanies delinquent patterns of behavior. Specific techniques to resolve parent-youth conflicts in healthy ways. Understand family patterns of interactions that are often repeated over generations. Better understanding adolescent development and promoting healthy child and parent choices. Again, I would look forward to your consideration of this item.
Very good. Colleagues, questions? All right, hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Item 5, resolution authorizing conditional approval of tax exemption and payment in lieu of taxes pilot for 1309 Madison and 415 Adams Apartments.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. Ms. Bohach? Morning.
Good morning. So this is we're asking to approve a conditional pilot for this project through ICCF. It is a $19 million project, which will consist of 2 separate buildings with 45 units. They are rent restricted through the Low-Income Housing Tax Credit Program. It's intended that it would be for households at or below 80% of the area median income, with the averaging being 60% or below. The developer has requested, of course, the option 2, which is the 1% service fee and the 2% contribution to the Affordable Housing Fund.
Very good. Questions? All right, hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 6, resolution authorizing conditional approval of tax exemption and payment in lieu of taxes for Carrier Crest Apartments.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported.
Okay, so this is a project where a convent was converted to affordable housing for seniors back in 1991 through the current owners. It received a 4% pilot, which was our policy at that time in 1992. And then in 2008, the city provided home funds for improvements to that facility, and a new pilot was approved for the term of that at that time, the policy was for 15 years. The pilot The pilot actually expires this year, so at the end of this year, it would roll off. However, the actual financing has 3 more years left on it, and so this is a request that a 3-year pilot be granted to continue the affordability. And this is a facility for 12 units, and 11 of those serve households at or below 50% of the area median income, and 1 unit is at 60% or below.
Very good. Questions? All right, hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Could I
thank
add
you.
one thing?
Oh, please.
For the previous, I just think it might be helpful information for anyone. ICCF is actually hosting a community open house for looking at their design concepts for those properties, or for that property. And they sent postcards out to 1,200 neighbors, but just thought you might be interested in knowing that. And those sessions are on the 28th. And I wrote it on my note here, because Dakota just told me in the back. And they are from 4 to 6:30 PM and 8 to 9:30 PM on August 28th at 1308 Madison.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
You're good. All right, we'll move on to item 7, resolution recognizing the West Michigan Special Hockey Association as a local civic organization.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. Good morning.
Good morning. Excuse me. I'm Karen Rajuezo. I'm president of the West Michigan Special Hockey Association. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization, provides the game of hockey to disabled children and adults in Grand Rapids in West Michigan. The program itself is free of charge to our players except for a small registration fee. So we provide all of the equipment, ice time, coaching staff, jerseys, everything for the players. We play out of Patterson here in Grand Rapids in a season that runs from October through March, and we are completely volunteer run, so there's no paid staff. And we're just looking to be recognized as a local organization.
Very good. Colleagues, any questions about this? All right, happy to do this. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
you so much. Item 8, resolution authorizing the acceptance of a grant award in the amount not to exceed $2,000 from JARS Cannabis in support of operational costs associated with the 2024 Project Clean Slate Expungement Program.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. Mr. Davis, good morning.
Good morning. I think, as Asante said, this title explains it. So unless you have questions, I'll be quiet.
Questions, colleagues?
I do have a
Yeah,
question.
go ahead.
What's, what is the total cost to run the expungement event? I mean, it's a lot of, obviously a lot of people are volunteering, but it's time, and if you don't have that number too, Mr. Davis, that's okay.
I can give you an estimate regarding it. Our costs have been increasing because we've expanded our services. So as you may recall, the expungement event used to be a one-day event where we would show up, we get volunteer lawyers, and we're still super grateful for community who shows up to help us. But that was a one-day thing. What we found at the last expungement event is that the demand was much higher than what we'd seen in previous years. In fact, there were so many people there that we literally took a list of names and numbers to continue to help people after the event. So our costs has continued to increase in that way. We've recently we're able to add some temporary support to help navigate that with a paralegal in our office. Generally, it was around $12,000. That cost has increased. So
Okay. Thank you.
Any further questions? All right, hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 9, resolution authorizing agreements with Grand Rapids Urban League in the amount not to exceed $329,369 to serve as the lead agency for Cure Violence Grand Rapids and implement program expansion across the city of Grand Rapids and Cure Violence Global in the amount not to exceed $125,000 for training and technical assistance.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported.
all right. So this is our third year working with Cure Violence. It's been a program that it's an evidence-based program. And many of you will recall when we initially began talking about Cure Violence, we recognized this to be a pilot and that it would take the full 3 years for us to have all of the data necessary to know the best way to move forward. But what we've been able to see over the past 2 years are trends in our target area. And that target area is located within the Third Ward, where we've seen significant decreases in the serious crime that Cure Violence works to help mitigate in community. And we know that Cure Violence doesn't do this alone. Cure Violence is part of the solution in community. Obviously, our police department and other members of community who work in other spaces help make that happen. Through the participatory budgeting process, there was a request specifically for the second ward to see an expansion of cure violence in that space. And throughout discussion and feedback that we've received from community and reviewing the data, we also saw that we were able to this year expand to the first ward as well. So this recognizes an expansion of the cure violence program in its third year to have target areas in the first, second, and third ward. As it relates to where those target areas will be, we're working with the police department to identify the target area for the first and second ward, but it's based off of the areas where you would see the highest the highest numbers of crime as it relates to those most severe crimes. The training and technical assistance is the part that we pay Cure Violence Global. Cure Violence Global is the organization that created the model and quite frankly owns the model. They give us all of the training that's necessary to move forward throughout the program.
Very good. Colleagues, questions about this? All right. Hearing none. Those in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Item 10, resolution authorizing an agreement with Bethany Christian Services in an amount not to exceed $12,000 to implement the refugee driving simulator project in Grand Rapids.
Support.
Moved and supported.
So this is a very exciting item for me. One of the things that we've learned over the last year and a half here in Grand Rapids is the need to provide specialized training and information for members of our refugee and immigrant communities. And as we've been in community talking about different public safety issues that have arisen, one of the things that we continue to hear is that there's a lot of difficulty as it relates to driving because the laws are different, because the expectations are different, because the way those spaces are navigated is different. And we're excited to partner with Bethany Christian Services to provide assistance in essentially building out a simulator program. So they're bringing in a driving simulating machine to work with our immigrant and refugee neighbors to help them get the skills necessary to do it. This is our contribution for the first year. The total cost of the program, I believe, is just around $50,000, and our contribution is $12,000.
Very good. Questions? All right. Hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right. Item 11, ordinance amending Section 1 of the Budget Ordinance 2023-15 for fiscal year 2024, Amendment Number 2.
So moved. Support.
Moved and supported. Ms. Claren, any?
Good morning, Commissioners. Our first item this morning is a budget reappropriation. We informally call it the carry forward. So this is purchases that were intended in fiscal year 23 that did not get accomplished. So we're basically moving that appropriation forward to fiscal year 24 to finish the purchase. There's detail in the attached document, but so I won't go through every line. Number 2 is out of the Oversight and Public Accountability Department. This is appropriating the Kellogg Foundation Grant Award. You'll recall we did appropriate the first year of that, $250,000. And this year is part of the second year and going into the third year. So instead of doing 2 separate budget amendments, that third year starts in April. So we're going to appropriate the remainder of the grant, which is $500,000. That would be in the other grants fund. Number 3 is a digital newspaper interface out of the public library. They're choosing to use some fund balance to appropriate this into the public library grants and projects fund. Number 4, this is related to the Ash Lagoon closure and the stormwater pump station over at the wastewater treatment facility. This is about $15.7 million total. We did do a notice of intent related to the clean water revolving fund portion of that. We intend to go issue that in September, but we're putting the appropriation in place now as they're getting started on the project. There's also a $1.7 million EPA grant related to this project, so that's how we get to the total of $15.7 million. That will be in the sewer improvement fund. Number 5, expansion at the Grand Rapids Public Museum. This is $777,000 going into the capital improvement fund. Number 6, this is an appropriation for a rescue vehicle. The Grand Rapids Police Department got a $9,000 donation to supplement the purchase of this vehicle. That will be out of the capital improvement fund. Another budget amendment from the police department for Michael's Public Safety Academy Assistance Program. It's $168,000 in the police grants fund. And then we have a few from the Community Development Department, starting with the lead paint inspection program. You'll recall from the FY24 adopted budget, we had this $200,000 for this program in our ARPA plan. The specifics of this program did not qualify for use of ARPA funds. However, we did want to recognize that the Commission did make this a priority program, so we are going to fund it with general fund balance. So there is an appropriation from fund balance. However, I plan to use ARPA funding for qualified uses in the general fund to make the general fund whole. So just so you know what I'm doing in the background in order to not affect the general fund, but that'll be $200,000 being appropriated for Code Compliance Department. The next one is the Michigan Indigent Defense Fund. This is just under $2.8 million being appropriated with no effect on fund balance. Then we have the Lead Hazard Control Grant. This is $700,000 being appropriated, again, in the Lead Hazard Control Reduction Fund with no effect on fund balance. Then we have the Michigan State Housing Development Grant. This is $500,000 in the other grants fund. And finally, we have the ARPA Community Rebuilders Initiative. This is $500,000 being appropriated in the other grants fund. Our contingent balance remains unchanged at just over $1.4 million.
Very good. Colleagues, any questions for the CFO about these items? All right, hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 12, bid list resolution, August 22, 2023. Any questions about any of these items?
So moved.
Oops, sorry. So moved.
Support.
Support. Moved and supported. Colleagues, any questions about any of these items on the bid list this morning? All right. Hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. All right. Item 13 is our warrant report for July 21, 2023 through August 8, 2023, and the travel and funds report for June 2023. Deputy Comptroller Rapun, good morning, sir.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the period of July 21st through August 8, 2023, the city released cash payments totaling $25.9 million, including approximately $5.6 million for employee payroll expenses and $460,000 for income tax warrants. In terms of quantity, we issued 2,122 income tax refunds and 1,328 checks and electronic payments. The details for all these payments issued in excess of $20,000 are included in your materials. Also included in your materials is the travel report and monthly funds report as of and for the 12 months ended June 30th, 2023. These reports reflect the unaudited balances for the most recent completed fiscal year. For the travel report, the unaudited year-to-date expenses is 65% of the annual budget, which is up from 60% versus the budget for the prior year. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have on any of the materials presented.
Colleagues, questions for the Comptroller? All right. Hearing none, those reports will be received and filed. Thank you, sir. And our final item on the agenda this morning is our Treasurer's Report for period July 26, 2023 through August 3, 2023. Mr. Treasurer.
Good morning, Commissioners. With our report today, we wanted to point out to you that Fitch had downgraded the long-term debt for the United States from AAA to AA+. We're expecting further downgrades. We've heard it from Moody's. Moody's downgraded some banks. We expect Fitch has made some announcements or some press releases that that's in question for them too. And we're not talking just small banks. We're talking about JP Morgan Chase. We're talking about Bank of America, Wells Fargo, larger institutions that are out there. Northern Trust, which is one that we work with our pension office. So some of those things are coming up. We're expecting to see those downgrades in the future. The city does hold investments in some of these U.S. agencies. And so we've noted on there that we have $130.6 million in Treasury debt, and $7.6 million is with Federal Farm Credit Bank, which is one of those items that was downgraded. Now, that's an agency, though, that is backed by full faith and credit of the federal government. So if their debt is going down, the government's going to infuse money into that to make sure that the bondholders are made whole. It's the backup plan, it's the insurance plan. But there are other agencies out there that do not have that same guarantee. My honest opinion on this is that there's going to be a whole lot of other things that have to go wrong before there's an issue with U.S. debt, with agency debt, whether they're implicit or explicit guaranteed debt. But the concern is out there that with these downgrades, we're going to see higher costs for our own debt and our own borrowing. This will impact our borrowing in the future. Our next bond issue might be a higher rate. As we continue to issue more debt, it might be a struggle for us to maintain our bond rating. We might face some headwinds that we're going to get downgraded. So that's something that we're very much paying attention to, and we should. We should as we approve large dollar purchases. We should as we're going out to spend money. ARPA dollars are ARPA dollars and can be spent. That's not borrowed money. That's money we already have in the bank. This is when you're going out and issuing more debt to go ahead and do large purchases. That is my concern. If we look at it just from the homeowner, let's take our own homeowner perspective. Not more than 4 years ago, you could still get an interest rate around 2.65% for a 30-year mortgage. So if you factor that into today, if you could get a median home price in Grand Rapids at $250,000 with 10% down, you're paying about $1,200 a month, and that's everything. Principal, interest, PMI, your escrow for your taxes, and your insurance. Today's rate right now for 30-year fixed mortgages, a national average is 7.58%. That puts that same monthly payment at $1,876. That's $700 a month more. And we're not seeing our house prices come down. We're seeing home sales still going in less than a week, and they're still going for the max rate. I'm seeing homes in my neighborhood that 3 years ago would have sold for probably about $240,000 that are now listed at $310,000. And they're getting $310,000. And that's in broken down condition trying to fix things. So think of a homeowner situation, they have to get their house, the roof over their head, and they'll come back and they'll refinance later. But at what price? They're going to pay that $1,876 for what, 2, 3, 4 years? And then when they refinance, they're going to get all the charges to refinance on top of that. So then they're going to be adding back to the principal that they already have paid down. The same is going to be true with city debt. For all the debt we issue today, the first time that we can get out of it is 10 years in the future when we can refinance. So just bringing that up, that we have to be very, very mindful of what we go out and we bond for and what we're committed to paying for and what the long-term implications are. And so I really think we have to ask that question when we're actually looking at large projects to say, what's the payback period? What is the true financing model? And what is the true cost to the city over the life of that item? Just like you would be doing for your own home purchase or for a vehicle purchase. As you decide whether it's a new vehicle, a leased vehicle, a certified used vehicle, and you fit it into your own budgets, we have to think of the same thing with the city budget. So with that, I conclude my report for today.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. Colleagues, questions for the Treasurer? All right, hearing none. That report will be received and filed. And with that, we can conclude the Fiscal Committee at 9:08. Thank you, everyone.
wonderful day to get the day started. This is our Community Development Committee. It begins approximately right now. It's approximately 9:15. Let us begin with our first resolution. Resolution approving a fireworks discharge permit for Art Prize in connection with the opening of Art Prize on September the 14th of this year, 2023. Good morning, sir.
Morning, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Another glorious day.
Great. You got a great smile on your face.
So moved.
So moved.
Yeah, we just having a conversation quick before y'all make that motion. Yeah.
I'll make sure.
He just grinning away, so I said, so he just brought me right into it.
Oh, you're welcome.
Go right ahead, sir.
Oh, sorry. I didn't know we had a motion, but anyway. Yeah, Art Prize Fireworks, I appreciate all the assistance in getting this in front of you guys. 3,000 shells will be fired in random sizes. So it's basically a smaller version of the 4th of July.
3,000 shells?
Yeah.
That's a lot.
It is. That's why we take it serious.
Yeah, I'm in favor of that. Colleagues, any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Our next resolution is a resolution approving and authorizing the accusation of 4024 Kalamazoo Avenue Southeast for $125,000, with a total cost not to exceed $130,000 for the development of the Kalamazoo Avenue Fire Station. Mr. Gracia.
So moved.
Support.
Good morning, Commissioners. What you have in front of you again is this resolution to purchase an additional property at 4024 Kalamazoo Avenue Southeast. As you recall, back in late March, the Commission approved the option agreement for those purchases of properties at 4040 and 4044 Kalamazoo Avenue Southeast, which is directly adjacent to this property. The Fire Department has determined that this purchase of this property will add the addition of this property will provide additional flexibility in the design of the station and increased efficiency in operation of the site layout. And so an agreement has been reached for the consideration of $125,000 and due diligence costs of an additional $5,000, which brings us to a not to exceed cost of $130,000.
Thank you. You know, it's a good thing we're getting this station done. It's been on our docket for a long time, so it'd be nice if we can get all the fire stations that need to be done. But since this is in Third Ward, I'm excited about it. So let's get that work done. Colleagues, any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it. Our third resolution is a resolution approving a water main financing agreement amendment in the amount of $445,000 in connection with the Coopersville Main Railway Bridge replacement, Bristol Avenue.
So moved.
Support.
Mr. Bergman.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning, sir.
So this is to support a utility improvement project in Walker associated with that new railroad bridge that's being constructed over Bristol Avenue. Utility work associated with it involves relocation of a sanitary sewer and connection of two dead-end water mains that are north and south of that bridge. We were notified by the City of Walker that their construction estimate for the water work is now $315,000 higher than originally anticipated. And so this amendment before you to the financing agreement increases it from the original amount of $130,000 up to $445,000. And per that agreement that was previously approved between the city and Walker, these costs will be recouped through their rate structure. So construction is anticipated to begin in April of 2024 and request your approval.
Colleagues, any questions? All in favor? Aye. Bridge is done. This concludes our committee meeting.
All right, good morning, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and call our Committee of the Whole meeting to order on this lovely Tuesday, day after school started. I know it's a busy week for some people, so appreciate everyone who is here this morning. So Commissioners, we have a couple items before us, actually just one action item, and then we have an executive session to discuss pending litigation. And so I'll call for that motion right after we work through our first item. And then we do have two important briefings today. One is a presentation on the procurement and utilization of unmanned vehicle system technology or drones, and then presentation of amendments to the city animal ordinance under animal control. So with that, I'll move forward with our first item. So this is a resolution confirming, I have the wrong item in front of me. It's a resolution approving polling locations and fixing election inspector pay for our upcoming November 7th election. This is a special election with one item on the election. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Support.
All right, moved and supported. I'm at one item on the ballot. City Clerk, you want to tell us about this?
So actually, there's Forest Hill, so GRPS has a millage vote, but Forest Hill Schools also has two items, and that's in just two of our precincts.
Thank you. Thanks for clarifying.
So voters who live in Kentwood Schools, Kentwood Hills, or Godwin Heights will not have anything. They will not have an election in November. So we're using our same locations, but the precincts that are in the same location will be consolidated together. So it'll be just one election team in each of those. And then there's no change in election pay. And GRPS will be reimbursing us for all expenses.
Good. All right, and absentee ballot applications already went out?
They are out. I have Commissioner Sassy's right here. She dropped it off, those are out, and obviously something new is there's a box there to get permanent ballots in the future, not permanent applications. So they'll take some learning and education on that as well.
Yeah, that's great. All right, Commissioners, any questions or comments? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, it carries. All right, next I will ask for a motion to go into executive session to discuss pending litigation. And City Attorney, is this in the law library or 601?
601.
Okay, and this will be in 601. So can I get a motion?
Moved. Support.
All right, moved and supported, and this is a voice vote, so I'll start down here with Commissioner Purdue.
Yes.
Commissioner
Yes.
Sassy.
Yes.
Connor. Moody.
Yes.
Robbins.
Yes.
And Knight.
Yes.
Thank you, and I am a yes. All right, so immediately following Cal, we will go down to room 601. So with that, Commissioners, I will now turn it over to our city manager to tee up our next two items, which are briefings. City Manager?
Thank you, Mayor, and good morning, members of the commission. I'd like to begin the first briefing with an update from the police department on the acquisition process for small unmanned aircraft systems. And this morning, during fiscal committee, our chief presented a recommendation through a procurement process recommending a vendor for an award of a contract, which will be on your evening agenda tonight. But he also gave an update over the robust engagement that he has had over the past several months, to include his update to this body with his strategic plan that informed the commission of potential use of technology in making the department more innovative earlier this year. Also, several presentations to the Public Safety Committee, one specifically on the 28th of March that resulted in a recommendation moving forward in support of this, and a presentation to this body on April the 11th, as well as a public hearing that was held in the month of April. Following that, the police department engaged with several neighborhood associations and had other community-wide conversations, and one specifically at Life Quest Church in the month of June, where community members was also invited to have conversations about the potential purchase, as well as our oversight office was also part of that discussion. So what I'd like the police chief to do is to come forward now and go in more detail over some of the feedback that he heard as part of the engagement process, as well as discuss some additional information that we have discovered about the use of this technology in other police departments that would further explain the department's recommendation, which you'll find on your agenda tonight. So with that, Chief Winstrom.
Thank you, City Manager, members of the committee. I'm joined here today by Deputy Chief Christian Rogers, Chief of Staff Matt Weibel, and Commanding Officer of our traffic unit, Sergeant Frank Barthel, who will all help me if there's more detailed questions that I need assistance with. So our strategic plan priorities are on point with the acquisition of unmanned aerial systems, which I'll refer to as UAS for the remainder of the presentation. Safer city through innovation and getting there through community engagement. The benefits are better images and capability to respond to and deploy for large events, for fleeing suspects, critical incidents, and traffic and crime scenes. There's a list of recent examples where area agencies have stepped up with mutual aid and responded. And we don't need to go back very far because we actually have a drone in the air right now that Kent County Sheriff's Department responded to the northeast side of town this morning. And we have an individual similar to an incident where we had on Ransom Street in April, where there's an individual who's armed themselves with a machete, who's subject to a mental health evaluation order by a judge, and we're utilizing that drone in real time right now to make sure that we have a safe outcome for that individual who's been going on the roof, in different windows, and we're able to follow him and make sure that the entire neighborhood is safe in this process using that technology. The quality of service also for the people in Grand Rapids is greatly improved by the use of the drones. If you see on the right image is what typically you would get if you were subject to a serious traffic crash. That's the sort of evidence that will be provided in court to insurance companies. And on the left is what you would obtain from a UAS, much more suitable for accident reconstruction. This is an image which I took myself on a cell phone at a recent shooting scene. One of our forensic technicians who was climbing up on a ladder to try and get an overall image of the scene to collect evidence. It's a camera in his hand. So the image that he was able to take would nowhere be as important in court as that which we are able to provide with the use of a drone on crime scenes. Numerous agencies, many much smaller than us, have been utilizing UAS for years. Including many of our much smaller neighbors. As I listed Big Rapids on here, I mentioned earlier today, I got phone calls from some towns I had never heard of in the Upper Peninsula with single-digit police officers that also utilize drones and have for some time. We received a tremendous amount of feedback during our months of discussions and directly addressed the biggest concerns in our draft policy. Number one, fear of weaponization, directly addressed in policy, no UAS shall be weaponized. Fear of artificial intelligence, AI, or facial recognition technology, both prohibited in the policy. Protection for First Amendment activities like protests, directly addressed in the policy. Acquisition was first, I'm told it was probably earlier than this, but I know Chief Payne discussed it on the news in July of 2021. He estimated the cost to be around $300,000. We added it to the strategic plan in February of this year and have talked about it pretty much nonstop since. Just about everywhere I go. The city manager touched on some of the places we've been, but numerous discussions, meetings. We've had surveys, hearings, presentation. It's been a big topic of discussion. I've heard from many hundreds, if not thousands, of people in Grand Rapids. This is the RFP selection is from, the leadership actually is local. A lot of area agency use this company, and this response to the RFP provides everything we asked for, has an excellent reputation for customer service. If we receive approval today, our timeline is to have UAS available very aggressively by mid-September. Administrative Policy 1503 governs the acquisition of drones, and compliance is detailed as follows. 1503-3A, a clear statement of purpose and use. This wording is in our policy, and individual explanations are provided to OPA for every flight. This is the equipment that we would obtain. Again, I'm joined by Sergeant Barthel, who can answer more specific questions as we come back to that. We would use UAS in the city limits. But if we go outside the city limits at the request of mutual aid, we will still be following not only the Grand Rapids Police policy, but also Administrative Policy 1503. How and when UAS will be used: large incidents, missing persons, document crime and traffic scenes, training, education, and community events. What privacy rights may be affected? Our over-collection of data, misuse of data, misuse of UAS. The mitigation plan required. The protections are in policy, and the protections are in training. They're listed on these two slides that include prohibitions on weaponization, personal use, harassment, invasion of privacy, violating the Constitution, random surveillance, and a requirement that pilots take reasonable precautions to mitigate even further by deactivating images or turning the images away from areas where such people may have an expectation of privacy. Every flight is recorded. Data is retained in evidence.com and follows existing rules and laws similar to what we use for body-worn camera and in-car camera at this time. All flights will be monitored in real time. The Grand Rapids Police Department retains responsibility for equipment and data. The Grand Rapids Police Department will share for public safety or law enforcement purposes only. Training consists of federal licensing and GRPD in-house on this policy, 1503, and the law. Potential adverse impacts on civil liabilities and civil rights are mitigated by training, by our policy, by our accountability system, and by OPA's audit function. Our retention schedule is the same as of in-car camera and body-worn camera is listed here. Again, all flights are recorded. Method for storing recorded information, again, the same as for BWC and ICC. It's evidence.com, or in the future, if we move on to a different program, it will be a similar evidence retention system with the same capabilities. Access to the data is in compliance with the law. The records manager retains this responsibility. A viewer's log exists in evidence.com and automatically captures all data. Data is treated as official police records. Data is owned by the Grand Rapids Police Department. Information is only released in compliance with the law. Evidence.com, again, is a system that will be used if in the future we change it, a system with the same comprehensive electronic evidence storage capabilities. And those responsible for compliance are myself as the Chief of Police, the Captain of Training and Engagement, the Lieutenant of Internal Affairs, the Captain of Support Services, and our Records Manager. In conclusion, we hold ourselves and want to be held to high standards, and we want the right equipment to provide excellent service for a safer Grand Rapids. Happy to answer any questions you have.
Great. Thank you, Chief. Appreciate this additional information. I know a lot of work has gone into this, and looking at the slides, I was reminded that we started to have this conversation when Chief Payne was here back in 2021. Granted, it was a different group of commissioners around this table, but clearly this has been a topic we've talked about at length in this community for years. So thank you. Commissioner Moody, I'll start with you.
Yep. Thank you, Chief, for this report. Appreciate it very much. Could you just go over and clarify real clearly for not just us, but for the public that might be listening, that you said that the the UASs will not be equipped with facial recognition technology. Could you explain why that technology won't be on there?
Absolutely. And just to put a highlight on that, in part of my community engagement, I had 3 different police chief advisory team meetings where individuals from the community meet with me monthly and advise me on things. And this has been a topic of conversation. In the most recent meetings, we discussed drones. One of my team members had just come back from a trip and landed and said that he approached the TSA stand at an airport, and they called him by name before he presented any identification. And that's a little scary to people, including me. So facial recognition is something that's emerging, and it can be intimidating. We do not only do we not intend to use it, we are prohibited from using it by our policy.
Thank you. Appreciate that clarification. All right, commissioners, additional questions? Commissioner Perdue?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Can you jog my memory? I remember when this first came before us, we talked about how the data is stored and who will own it, and I think you referenced Axios.
So Axon is the provider of and maintainer of evidence.com, and in our contract with Axon, it says right in there, and I can happy to share that provision of the contract. It states very clearly that the Grand Rapids Police Department owns that data.
Okay. Wonderful. I just wanted to confirm that was still the case. And then I'm wondering, I don't know if you would be the best person to speak to this or Director Davis, but I know there are reporting requirements and oversight requirements built into our policy. So I'm wondering if we can have a quick review of what those are.
Well, I'll tell you from the police part of point of view, and Director Davis and I, is Director Davis here? Oh, here he's coming. We went back and forth, we shared the draft policy, and we worked it out. So requirements from our point of view are to document the things that he needs for every flight, and that's date, time, location, where the flight path is, what was recorded, what the purpose was, whether there was a warrant involved, and then any complaints that come in, because complaints should be made directly to Director Davis, but if someone wants to walk into the police station and make a complaint, we will immediately notify Director Davis of the complaint so that he has the capability to conduct what he has to do. And if he wants to elaborate, I'm happy to turn it over to.
Great, thank you. Mr. Davis, good to
morning.
see you, our Director of Public Oversight and Accountability.
Thank you. So according to Administrative Policy 1503, the reporting requirements for all surveillance equipment that falls under this policy are as follows. There's a quarterly report that is provided from the department to OPA. And we use those quarterly reports include the way the surveillance equipment was used. We're able to then audit that information and add that to an annual report. And the annual report is what's released publicly that documents the full picture of how that technology is used. We also compare it to things like Fourth Amendment rights and other civil rights spaces to consider whether or not there's disparate impacts on how that technology is used. So the requirement from the department is to provide the information to us on a quarterly basis. The department's commitment has been to provide us with the information for each and every flight that is included.
Great, thanks. Mr. Davis, can I ask a follow-up question on that? I know I've, in the last several months, have had conversations with a number of my peers throughout the state of Michigan. I'm just curious from your perspective, is there any other department with this level of oversight for utilization of technology that you're aware of?
I'm not aware of any other police department that has this level of oversight as it relates to surveillance use.
Okay, thanks. I've talked to many of my colleagues, and I'm not aware of any either. So I just thought if there is a city out there, I would like to know about it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Isasi?
Just thank you
I'm
for,
sorry, Commissioner Perdue.
it's okay. Thank you for kind of reiterating that. I think that's really important for the public, and I think shows the balance and the intentionality of the approach. One last question. I am wondering, this is kind of a continuation of our first conversation, but the definition for civil unrest is 3 persons. There's some other pieces. So I'm curious of how you came to that definition.
Well, I like to say I wordsmithed it, but I stole the definition from the state of Michigan.
Okay.
So that's the legal definition in criminal law by the state of Michigan that we used.
Okay.
And I could have better answered your initial question. I should say that in the draft policy, we specifically designated the captain of training and engagement. It is that individual, whoever's in that role, it is their job to provide the quarterly reports as well. But also we do have it's the role of the commanding officer of internal affairs to immediately notify of any complaints as well.
Okay. Thank you. And I think it's important for the public to know that when it comes to oversight, and especially the oversight that's built into our contracts, that your team, the officers kind of agree to that. It's like you all are kind of willing parties to say we want high quality, safe, fair public safety. So I think that's an important.
And what I always say, if people want us to be held to high standards, I think I hold the officers to a higher standard than any other police chief, and they want to be held. They want to be known as the professionals that they are. I know on one of the slides I kind of pointed out all the area agencies that have already utilized drones, and some people say, well, that's not we're talking about Grand Rapids. That's Grand Rapids, and I get that, but also. Nobody else has, Director Davis, nobody else has 1503. I mean, we have that added oversight that doesn't exist elsewhere, so it's a big deal.
Yep, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Great question and good feedback, Commissioner. And then just to clarify, Chief, and kind of maybe put an exclamation point on this, in regards to civil unrest, that's consistent too with how the state police define civil unrest, correct?
That is correct, yes. Yep.
Okay, thanks. I'll go Commissioner Isasi, and then Commissioner Knight, did you have a question? Go ahead, Commissioner.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chief. Just heard some of the presentation earlier at our fiscal committee, and obviously did move it forward for consideration on our consent agenda. I just wanted to say a couple things, because now I feel like I have a little bit of history now too, Mayor. In 2019 is when we first started talking about the usage of drones in these pieces at public safety. I wasn't yet on the commission, but I think at that point we were, in 2020, people wrote us a lot and said, you guys need to have body cameras. And what we continued to tell people is we had already invested in those like 5 years prior, I think. And so in some ways, we've been on the front end of a lot of this technology. This is probably an example where we haven't been for a whole host of reasons, a lot of changes. We lived through some unprecedented times over these last couple of years, and I appreciate city manager and staff and you, Chief, to really take the time. I know sometimes things feel like it moves fast, but this has been a lot of time to sort of say, what do we need to do? What are the questions that we need to ask? The biggest questions that I think I was asked as I've talked to people is around the facial recognition. I think Detroit just recently had a case, so really glad to highlight that, and thank you, Commissioner Moody, for asking that question. Around the privacy pieces, we talked a little bit today. If we have one of these, it's already telling me the things that I'm going to buy tomorrow based on the things that I said today. I think AI, GPT chat, all these things are changing the way that we work. And in some ways, I think we have to embrace technology and also know that it cannot solve everything. It can't solve community relations, but it is another tool that the department has. People have asked me about oversight, so I think Commissioner Perdue, those are great questions to continue to ask. I think I would agree with what you said, the Mayor, the level of oversight that we have, anything we can do to make sure that rights are not infringed is a good investment, and I think that has continued to be. And then another question that people typically ask is like, how will I know that it's being deployed? And I think that will be harder, because we get some questions like, hey, I saw helicopters in this neighborhood. Why is this going on? They'll assume that those are our things in the past. And so, I don't think that that's probably feasible, because I know today in fiscal you talked about it being utilized perhaps a couple times a week. Right now we had a situation that, I don't know if it's still ongoing, that's happening, where you're able to share that. So those are I wanted to highlight those, and I want to say, I think all of those have been answered. I want to just give you a kudos for slide 8. Whoever took that picture, good job. No, in all seriousness, I think you asked and answered. And so when we can be really direct with our communications, this is a really great slide of, I think, the questions and some of the concerns that individuals have brought up to us about utilizing tools like the unmanned aerial aircraft systems. And then I think, just again, we have that opportunity with Office of Oversight with a review. How can we put that into other pieces, other departments? Mr. Davis, I sent something today, a little bit separate to the mayor and city manager, just what's that deeper level of communications that we can go to? What's that next level? Because we do have so much information that is shared out. So I just feel like the questions have been asked, they've been answered, and I appreciate this general briefing as we prepare to make a decision today. Thank you. Not really a question, sorry.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner. But it's good feedback, and I'm glad that you are really elevating those important issues. So thank you. Commissioner Knight?
Yeah, I just want to highlight the appreciation of the comments from my colleagues. I wanted to just dig a little bit deeper, and this is probably more for you, Mr. Davis, on process, just so people really understand, right? You have the quarterly report that's done, that's sent to your department, and then being able to look at, for auditing purposes, where they're being deployed and who is being impacted, throughout the community more, if it's more in certain areas than others. When that happens, or if, I'm not saying it will, but if that should happen, right, what's the next step on that? Is there, we come back and have another discussion about stepping back from what we're doing, relooking at the processes and how to begin to change that, and then how do we make sure to communicate that information, like Commissioner Sassy said, to our community, right? Because these are the things that people don't necessarily hear all the time, but how to be even more effective in sharing that information so that there's not a situation that happens and then the report comes out a year later, but people are angry about what happened here, and there's no way for them to communicate or have conversation about what the situation is, if that makes sense.
It does. Great question, Commissioner. So one of the things that we worked very diligently with when we were working with the NAACP to create Administrative Policy 1503 was to ensure that there was a committee on oversight that included community members. And one of the great things about the structure we already had here in the city is that we had a public safety committee. So we saw this is a space where the Public Safety Committee will be able to utilize authority to review those types of incidents. So essentially, the policy gives authority to the Public Safety Committee to tell the police department in this case, or any department that falls within this surveillance policy to say, you need to stop using this technology until we have the opportunity to go back to review it to ensure there's compliance. So that's included in an Administrative Policy 1503, and I believe that's in Section 6.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. City Manager?
And I would, in addition, as we would prepare for such a conversation with Public Safety Committee, if that were the case, even prior to the public meeting, I would expect the police department to be responsive to whatever findings the Oversight Office would present, and then be accountable to my review in addition to the Public Safety review.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioners, any final questions or comments? All right, thank you. Appreciate this. We'll revisit this item again tonight at our 7 p.m. meeting. And then next, we will move on to our next briefing that we have this morning, and that's a presentation on amendments to the city animal ordinances, animal control, beekeeping, and backyard chicken regulations. And we'll turn this over to Ms. Turkelson, and then City Manager, did you want to start with any information on this item? I know it's been talked about by some of us, and I know the city attorney has been involved as well.
Thank you, Mayor. And we want to provide a high-level overview of some proposed changes that we'll bring to you over the next coming weeks. Today is just the introduction through briefing, but there have been changes or the recognition in state law that allows both the city and the county to have oversight of enforcement of certain animal control provisions, but not with duplicity. So the city could preempt the county from doing certain things, and so this better helps us to align with practice. But there's also some provisions that we discuss through recommendation of the Urban Agricultural Committee. It also affects same parts of the code, and we want to bring forth those recommendations that address some ways in which we allow some of our urban agriculture accommodations for bees and chickens. So, Ms. Turkelson will provide overview. I know we work very closely with our city attorney's office. I want to thank Ms. Hitchcock for her help on this as well.
Great, thank you. All right, I'll turn it to Ms. Turkelson and hope that this isn't as controversial as the first time we talked about backyard chickens all those years ago.
You and I both, yes. So good morning. As City Manager stated, we are here today to discuss a few amendments. I am actually in partnership with the Department of Law, Megan Lepowski. I hope I didn't butcher that, I'm sorry. And I will tag this presentation. She will take the first part, I will do the second. We also have here today Lieutenant Wheeler from Kent County Sheriff's Department that will assist in the Q&A should that be necessary. So as the City Manager stated, there is a proposed change to the animal ordinance, which is Chapter 155, due to the adoption of the Kent County Animal Control Ordinance. Megan will provide an overview of that. Slightly opportunistic because we are opening up this chapter of the ordinance and on the heels of receiving recommendations from the Urban Agriculture Committee, it felt like a good time to update that animal ordinance and specifically to Articles 3 and 5, which I think that should say 3 and 4, which would be the bees and chicken regulations and reflect the recommendations of the Urban Agricultural Committee. I'll also note that we are also in process of considering a name change of that ordinance currently, or the chapter currently Animal Ordinance. We'll likely change it to something like Urban Agriculture. So as we implement future recommendations from that committee, we could have an Urban Ag chapter of the ordinance and populate that accordingly in the future. So with that, I'll turn it over to Megan for the first few slides.
Good morning. So as has sort of already been alluded to, Kent County recently adopted their own animal control ordinance, and under state law, in any city with an animal ordinance, the county cannot have jurisdiction within that city. So the county has asked that we repeal our animal control ordinance while retaining certain local issues that we want to continue to have controlled by the city. So for example, bees and backyard chickens, those provisions are being moved to other sections of the city code or renamed as a means of keeping those within the city's jurisdiction. The city attorney's office has reviewed both the city's animal ordinance and the county's new animal control ordinance to see what is covered by each, to see if there are any gaps and what needs to be moved within the city's ordinance. And those sections have been identified as backyard chickens, bees, and barking dogs. So we've been working with the planning department to determine where those things need to be moved in the city code. The city attorney's office has also been in contact with the Kent County Sheriff's Office to determine what would be the best way to make those changes to align with what the county has envisioned. And as Kristen said, Lieutenant Wheeler is available for any questions you might have about that at the end of the presentation.
All right, in a somewhat significant pivot of discussion. The second part of this presentation is really around the bees and the chickens, the Urban Ag recommendations. Taking a step back for those that might not be familiar with this process, a committee was formed in 2017 that was tasked with educating the public about the benefits of locally grown foods, also assisting city staff in developing recommendations around our Urban Ag, and really their goal was to provide some comprehensive review of the ordinance, provide us with some recommendations that we would then incorporate whether through zoning or city code. Also note here about the significant engagement work that was done at that time that helped inform the regulations. Their considerations are more broad than what we're discussing today. There are opportunities or recommendations that affect the city's accessory structures, backyard animals and livestock, composting, farm stands, edible landscaping, as well as chickens and bees. But again, for today, we're really focusing on backyard chickens and bees. There is additional work that we will be coming before both Planning Commission and City Commission as we work to implement the other recommendations of the committee. So this slide shows what that current state is regarding our bee regulations. The recommendations or the changes that would be brought before you in the near future would be to update our established flyaway barrier requirements, creating a 3-year renewal process versus a 1-year, allowing additional hives more flexibility for the lot sizes, and also providing different setbacks, lesser setbacks than what is currently required by the ordinance. So for backyard chickens, we do allow for chickens to be kept on property. There are regulations associated with that relative to setback, number of chickens. There are also a requirement about noticing in that when the planning department or the development center receives an application for backyard chickens, we do send out that notice to all neighbors within a specified distance. And if we do receive an objection, then that permit is denied. So you can see part of that recommendation is to eliminate the notification requirement and rather focus maybe more on a noticing or just treat it like a standard permit where it's received, verified for compliance with the ordinance, and then the permit is issued. One of the recommendations does surround the amount of the fee permit. That would be something we would do when we update the fee ordinance with the next fiscal year. And so I think that summarizes the recommendations. And then the check marks on both slides really show that we are implementing all of the recommendations that have been brought forward by the Urban Ag Committee with these changes. Slight exception to that, of course, is the cost of the permitting that will be done when we update the fee ordinance next July. So for next steps, today is just a briefing and overview to provide you with an introduction about the changes that are being proposed. In September, we would come before you with a resolution to schedule a public hearing for September 19th with anticipated ordinance consideration on October the 10th. So that concludes the overview, and of course, I'm available for questions along with Megan and Lieutenant Wheeler.
Mayor, if I could, I think we have copies of
Yes.
Proposed draft changes to the ordinance for the commission review, and we intend to bring these changes forward at next meeting.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, Commissioners, any questions or comments? Commissioner Moody?
Thank you, Ms. Ferguson, for this report. I just have a question to ask. You said 52 permits were renewed and 2 were denied. What is the reason for denial of permits in reference to chickens?
Yes, so I do have that data. So in year 2020, we did have approximately, do quick math, I think it was 39 permits that were applied for. 2 were denied as a result of their inability to comply with the underlying zoning requirements, 5 of which were denied based on neighbor objection, and then 33 were issued because they complied and did not receive an objection.
Do you know what the objections were?
I don't offhand.
Great. Thanks, Commissioner.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I also just wanted to thank Commissioner Carol Hennessy as well. It was something that she had reached out to me about initially just to kind of put on our radar, just to help with continuity of enforcement between the city and county, which I think is just an element of good governance. So appreciate her work in this space. And then just a quick question too. I guess how many of the other cities have already repealed their own ordinances?
We'll let Lieutenant Wheeler answer that question.
All right, welcome, Lieutenant. It's good to have you here, and thanks for your service and
Yes,
partnership.
thank you for the time. Thank you very much. As of now that I'm aware of, and I haven't reached out to them since our quadrant meetings, Kentwood Walker had already repealed it, and Lowell as well, and Cedar Springs. I'm still working with Wyoming and Granville to follow through with them. I believe, just off the top of my head here, so I apologize, I don't have this firsthand, but all of the townships outside of Lowell and Virgins Township have gotten on board with it as well as repealing their animal ordinances.
Great.
So we've got almost everybody.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. And I should say, I've talked to my colleagues at the Metro 6, our Metro 6 mayors, and I know they're in the process of doing it similar to us. That's my understanding. So hopefully
Very
there will
good.
be consistency across the entire county.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So it's a work in progress, so if you guys obviously have any input, please let me know, and, changes can always be made in what we're doing, so.
Yeah, thank you. Commissioner Isasi?
Thank you, Mayor. On page 8, I just want to make sure I'm reading this correctly. Under backyard chickens, the last committee policy recommendations require notifications to neighbors rather than require permission from neighbors. Get that. But then it says proposed ordinance does not contain neighborhood notification and eliminates. So will there be notification?
So thank you for that clarifying question. So the recommendation of the committee was, I think, trying to find a compromise. And so their suggestion was to require noticing but not request permission. It is the planning department's recommendation to eliminate all noticing requirements and simply treat it like any other permit where if it meets the requirements of the ordinance, and then a permit is issued.
Yeah.
Nope, good, thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for clarifying that. But with that being said, hypothetically, if there is a concern, a neighbor would be able to complain. There'd still be a complaint process in place that we could then follow up on and at least examine to see if there's a legitimate complaint.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
So I'll just say that it allows them to still complain, but it takes it out of someone being able to object and not give any reason. That's been problematic for us all along, that they can object, but we don't require a reason. It could be, a neighbor just wants to be vindictive and there's no legitimate reason, and then we deny the person. So the law department is in support and would be glad if that were to go away.
Okay, thanks. Commissioner, did you have a follow-up question to that?
Yeah, I just had a follow-up question. I'm sorry. I just had a follow-up question around the decreases in the fee. So the initial one was 50, and that was for a 3-year permit?
Yes.
Okay, and so now the proposed is 25 for a 3-year permit. I think obviously people always want to see things decreased. Do we have a sense from any of the either questions that we had that, applying for it was ever a barrier for individuals to seek out this permit?
Well, I think that's definitely a possibility, right? Anytime you have a permit process that requires information, site plans and such, that could be viewed as burdensome. We typically look at it as an advantage so that we make sure that the person is going to comply before they make the investment, either of time or money in setting themselves up. So I think it's a relatively nominal fee. Certainly we have support in our department that can help an individual through that process should they be challenged by it. But I think that there's more benefit to a permit process than to simply have it as something that can be done because of the enforcement concerns on the back end.
Thank you.
Yeah, good question. Commissioner Perdue?
Thank you. Good morning. Ooh, lost my place. So kind of continuing the conversation around concerns and receiving reasons versus not receiving reasons. I'm curious if you all have seen or anticipate any legitimate concerns or opposition to the chickens in the backyard issue. Have you seen it? Do you anticipate?
So in my experience, most of the objections are coming from a place of concern about what chickens will do or the noise that they will make or the odors or neighbors not getting along very well. Through the conversations with the Urban Ag Committee and with the recommendations or the ordinance requirements that are in place or will be in place, I'm not sure I see any detriment to an adjacent property owner. We don't allow roosters. There are setback requirements. There are still responsibilities about good property maintenance, cleanup, et cetera.
Okay. Part of the reason I asked is my neighbor has had chickens for a very long time, and I wouldn't know that they were there unless I looked. So I was curious if there was something that maybe others are experienced that I haven't experienced. So that's helpful. I'm hearing maybe not so much. On the bees, I am not as familiar with bees. What is a flyaway barrier requirement? that just so they don't literally fly away? What does that mean?
I'm phoning a friend. Connie, are you here?
Phone a friend.
I'm sorry, I don't fully understand the flyaway barrier. I'm trusting the expertise of the Urban Ag Committee to make sure that maybe someone else knows here.
Okay. I'm sure there's some, legitimate technical expertise there.
Yeah, and I'm not an expert. What I do know, having talked to folks, is that it's like a screening barrier. So beehives sometimes, especially during certain times when they are, during times of year, they can leave a beehive and go somewhere else. And
Oh, I see.
And so it's to prevent that from happening. Typically with the beehive houses, they tend to stay put, but they can leave and find another place. But we might, Connie, are you an expert in this? I see Connie Bohach, Ms. Bohach.
I can commit to
Are you an
educating
expert in the beehives?
Not an expert, but I was just going to whisper to Kristen that it's also to help them to fly like up and out as opposed to just so that they. So it's a barrier, as you indicated, of a certain height that also makes them fly.
Sounds like we need some beekeeping workshops.
That's
as
right.
Well,
Well, I have a few friends who are and are very supportive of this change. So I'm sure they would be happy to send us information.
I'm really excited about these changes. Last question. I know that I think I'm understanding that the barking dog piece is just moving from one place to another. I'm just curious if you can give a brief overview of the contents of the policy regarding barking dogs, because that is something I do get messages from constituents about.
Yes, so what sort of started this all is that the dog law of 1919 requires the city to repeal its animal ordinance for the county to enforce theirs. And so one of the big sections that's being removed from our animal ordinance is the section on dogs, which I believe is Article 2. And one provision in there that we would like the city to be able to keep is to prevent nuisance barking dogs. So that section in particular is going to be moved to the prohibited noise section, likely of the noise ordinance.
Okay, thank you. And then follow up, I know that we have, on the books where if someone doesn't clean up after their dog, if they're taking them for a walk, that we can get involved. Is that something that was to remain under us, or would that be the county?
I think that will primarily be the county, but I will double check on that.
That would be helpful, because that is much more specific to some of the complaints that I get. So,
yes.
Thank you. That's all.
That's a good question, although I'll follow up with the city manager. Two things. One, I would anticipate we would still be able to enforce in our park system and other right-of-ways that are city-owned property, which is currently prohibited, or we tell people they have to clean up after their dogs. So maybe I'll turn to city manager about that, or city attorney. And then secondly, in addition to the barking dogs and people not cleaning up after their dogs, I know probably the third greatest concern that is brought to our attention is when individuals have unleashed and especially aggressive dogs. And that is obviously a significant safety issue. We've had a lot of dog bites. I know the health department is also involved in that work around education. But those are probably the three big ones that I would say we need to make sure that we still have a plan for enforcement, and that's where we rely on our partners at the county to come in and give assistance.
Yes, so I think this will largely be a continued partnership with the county. And part of this really is just the title of the ordinance. The fact that it's titled an animal ordinance seems to conflict with the state law. And so that's the major thing that we need to make sure we change while retaining jurisdiction over those issues that we would like to.
Okay, thanks. City manager?
Mayor, I agree that for some of the local issues, particularly in our parks or public places where we want to make sure animals are properly supervised by owners and are on leashes, as well as that owners are properly cleaning up after them. We will make sure that we have a clear understanding of our ability to also immediately react to some of those conditions in which we may need complaints. The other provision I wanted to make clear on is unfortunately, when it does happen because of vehicular incidents or whatever, in terms of dead dogs, that still would be the city's responsibility to ensure that those animals are picked up. And this is not Kristen, but I'm This is Mr. Hurt Refuse, and I was assured that this would still allow us to have those same ability to do that. That the county doesn't pick up the dead animals. Is that correct?
I'm not sure about that, but I believe we also have a process for dealing with deer, which I think is on the agenda for later on.
Right.
So I think it would be a similar issue where we would be able to handle that.
That's my understanding, and I'm looking to either the city attorney or deputy city attorney if they can confirm that the city still has the ability to.
Yeah, I that's my understanding as well, that if there's any type of, dead animal or obstruction in any of our streets, it'd be up to us. But the County Road Commission does clean up as well on county roads. So I know that is not necessarily the Sheriff's Department, but the County Road Commission. Only because we have a couple county roads in the city of Grand Rapids, and I know it's been an issue in the past. Commissioner?
That is interesting because recently have been contacted by a constituent about multiple deer being hit and knocked up into her yard. And so she's had to remove carcasses out of her yard, and it's very disheartening. Who's responsible for that? Because
If it's private property, it's their responsibility, but if it's in the right of way, it's ours.
so does she throw it back out in the street and then she doesn't have to do
I'm
it, or-
not giving it advice. I mean, I know what we do in the UP, but.
Okay.
As Mayor, we will have a more extensive briefing this afternoon and on that topic specifically, but I would also like us to clarify for the record doing public safety on the current practice of dealing with other animals that are dead in the right of way.
The city attorney or deputy city attorney, do either of you want to, and it's not necessarily dogs, right? It's raccoons, it's skunks, it's.
Yeah, it's kind of felt like we've been on Noah's Ark in the law department lately, talking about bees and chickens and dogs and deer. I think you've all kind of hit the nail on the head. It's kind of situationally based. It depends on where this occurs. We do plan on bringing these changes forward with some more articulate advice based on the concerns that you're raising here. So we can probably get that in better context to you at a future introduction on this. Lieutenant Wheeler also said he can talk operationally with you about how the county and the city will work together to manage the municipal interests and also the county imposed duties from the animal ordinance. There will be more to come on this, and this feedback is really great, so we can help report back out at future meetings. But it's somewhat situationally based. Yes, the city can pick up what we need to pick up moving forward. This isn't going to prohibit that, and we'll all be working together.
Yeah, thanks. And as we continue to talk about this and consider these changes, what would be helpful, I think, going back to just communication and education, is to almost have an FAQ, right? Like if it's a concern about, I was walking in the Highlands and there was a couple with a dog off a leash, and if you're terrified of dogs, that would be very scary, right? So who do you call if there's a dog off the leash, or somebody not picking up after the dog, or a dead animal in the roadway, or an aggressive dog? I think it'd be helpful for residents to know, who do I call for what, particularly if we're going to bifurcate ownership of the sheriff's department is responding to aggressive dogs or these types of calls, but yet we're still responding to these types of incidents. So as we consider these changes, I think that would be helpful. Even the changes we're making around beekeeping and backyard chickens, it'd be good to have some FAQ or some good communication about those changes.
Yeah. I was going to say that I heard 5 areas of concern from you all specifically, and we'll make sure that before we come back, we have answers to those 5 areas. And the FAQ, I heard that as well, and so we'll address that specifically.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks. All right, commissioners, any final questions or comments? All right, I think we gave good feedback. We'll expect some additional information to come back to us, and then this will be up for consideration back before us. Will you remind me?
Let's see the next steps.
Schedule a public hearing.
September 15th.
September 5th, okay.
Public hearing.
For a public hearing. All right, great. Thank you. All right. With that, we will close this briefing. City Manager, anything else before we call to close our Committee of the Whole? All right. So Commissioners, we do have executive session, so please join me down in room 601.